Good morning, good afternoon, good night.
It's on the Truman Show.
For anybody that's listening, whatever time zone that you're on. So today at Business Belters, we want to talk about the long-term business strategy. So often we talk about things to do with our business strategy right now, but we're not always talking about what's the long-term plan. You know, why did you get into business in the first place? Did you do it as a lifestyle business just to, you know, get through life? You know, are you going to retire? Are you going to sell your business and retire? Or are you doing it to try and get more and more businesses as well? What we're going to do with this is we're going to build it into a series. So this is the first one where we're going to highlight, like, you know, it's an introduction episode, and then we're going to really delve into some of these points, really to try and get you to understand a little bit more about a long-term business strategy. And I think it's going to be a really, really good topic and a really, really good series. So, John, do you want to kind of kick us off and long-term business strategy and what your sort of background is?
Yeah, no, definitely. So, don't want to give too much of the specifics away because we will focus on this as a series. But really the idea with this is me and Mark always have brainstorming sessions and we look at what are the future topics coming up, what are people likely to be interested about. A lot of the kind of topics that we spoke about have came from us directly, so it's our past experience, it's things that we face every day, it's also things that we're observing out there in the market. But these kind of topics that we're touching on, these are things that me and Mark actually speak about quite a lot, but you don't really hear it a lot in the business community. Yeah. So similar to what we said in the past, Mark, where we're kind of looking at things and it's like nobody talks about business failures, they don't talk about this. I would say that a lot of these kind of topics that we're focused on and long-term strategies, it's much more kind of depth to it, and I don't think every business owner has even maybe considered some of these topics.
Yeah.
And that should make it more interesting to begin with.
Yeah.
So like there's a few absolute belters coming up, which is going to be great. But for today's episode, what I really wanted to kind of talk about was how do we kind of go about that long-term strategy? How do we think about that? How do we know what the kind of long-term strategy should be for us? Mm-hmm. And then we can start to kind of delve into some of the topics in the coming episodes.
Yeah. So there's like, for me, I'll give you a background of what I want to do with the company and how I want to kind of scale it. So we've obviously got a good base in Glasgow, and we've built up the base in Glasgow. And I swithered about turning Marketing Mavens into a franchise and having it as a franchise and people kind of buying into that. But then I kind of took a bit of a sort of best of both worlds. I'm going to take the franchise model, but I'm going to just keep it as a sort of Marketing Maven. So as I scale, we make Glasgow, it's a local based marketing company. We do have clients like elsewhere, but majority is like Central Belt of Scotland. And that would be the base for Central Belt of Scotland, and we would look at that. But then as we grow, we take this model of how we've made Glasgow great and we move that into a Manchester or a London or a Dublin, and basically take that same model, build it within there, and that's how we're going to scale and make it basically like a national or, you know, even global marketing agency. But with that, it got me thinking. It's going to be kind of, you know, delving into certain aspects of it, because some things that, like, one of the things that you maybe want to talk about is like succession planning. So I am like the head of the base at Glasgow, but if we move it to somewhere else, I don't want to be the one that's the head of the base. I need somebody else that takes over. So with succession planning, can I actually do something within, you know, the team? Can I actually start training somebody and mature someone into the role? And so that's one of the kind of things I'm thinking about. But also then and another thing is, like, you know, trying to, you know, buy businesses, you know, to you know, is one of the things, like, is it a good idea to, when you're trying to move to a Manchester or a Dublin or a London, just to start fresh? Because as you said, you know, in episodes past, if you start and you just say, hi, I'm John and I'm the new marketing agency, then they kind of like that. You've not really got a background.
Has no track record.
Yes, you've got a kind of track record in Glasgow. However, if I was to go and buy a business, and the business has had, you know, been serving clients,
yep,
and you buy over that and you go, actually now we're going to basically do it, and you've done this in the past as well, you know, and it'd be good to obviously you know, when we get into it, like, you really delve into like all the stuff, because there's like 2p and over, all the things,
the stuff,
the risks of it and all that sort of stuff.
Definitely some belters that we'll be covering in the series for it. I think that's one of the kind of things I've looked at with my business is I've kind of done this in a kind of lower level, in the sense that like, you build a business up, you sell a business, you kind of see your equity, your value expressed at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think is quite interesting, and why one of the reasons I wanted to kind of talk about the series, was I've kind of recognised flaws in that model, where I met a guy in the alternative board probably about 4 years ago, and I was quite fascinated because he spoke about he built businesses and he built them in an arc. So he started the business, built the business up, sold the business, then he got his next business, does the same. And I was thinking, that guy's actually like thinking on such a different level to where I'm thinking. So at that time I was naive. I see my business as my baby. It's the most important thing in my life. I want to make sure that business is thriving. I couldn't imagine selling my wains. That ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. That's flawed logic, massively so, because you shouldn't be emotionally attached to the business like that. It is just an entity. That's not to say you don't have passion for it. Of course you do have passion for it, but your job is to kind of like grow that company and kind of like build up that sort of market share for it. So looking at it that way, I thought that was like, it really opened my eyes up to this idea of like building businesses up and selling them. But my mindset then matured. Funny enough, another guy came into the alternative board. This time this guy had, I think it was 53 businesses, and I'm like, hold the bus. Yeah. how do you have 53 businesses? And I'm going, you don't look that stressed, right? So obviously you're not sitting working in these businesses, but even to manage 53 businesses, that's like a property portfolio. So then I started to kind of dig into it, and I'm thinking, right, that's clever. You know, so he's built this portfolio of businesses over many years, and he's kind of building it like an asset base. So it's almost like a pension or something. And I was actually speaking before we started recording today. I was on a networking meeting, and we were talking about that. The guy said that he basically stopped paying his pension at 25 and started building like a portfolio. And that's kind of my school of thought is, I want to build Hybrid Anchor into a group. And it's like, I don't want to do it. It is happening just now. So right now there's Hybrid Anchor, there's a company we own shares in, and then there's a new company forming up under it. So the idea that I have now is to kind of build this holistic overview, like a company that basically manages these other businesses underneath, and it allows new brands to be born. It allows me to acquire into other companies, and there's different reasons why I want to do that. It's not just about there's an asset and I see that I could add value to it. What I'm actually looking for is, could I actually buy things that have history behind them that I can then leverage that history to kind of get more growth? So anybody that does tendering, they know that you kind of need your 3 years books. But the hypocrisy of tendering and the way it actually works in reality is, if I bought an agency in Glasgow today, I would get their history and their turnover, even though I've only owned it for 2 hours. So in 2 hours I could express more value for that company than the best startup that I could possibly think of. That's a bit of a mind-blowing sort of thought in my mind. The first time I got exposed to that, I was thinking, I can't even believe that these kind of things are possible. Or how could you buy a business inside its own structure? So how could you reach out and buy an agency with their own money rather than your money? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. So how does that work? But there is deals like that, and I'm seeing direct acquisitions, shares acquisitions, buying departments, and I think like going through that as a series, looking at each one of the kind of options. And it's not to say that that's exclusively all the options that are out there, but I thought, what a fascinating topic, because I would say that maybe 1 in every 1,000 business owners I meet, they kind of get that. Like, that growth through acquisition is quite an unusual thing. And you'll see maybe more established businesses, because probably their accountants are going, you're actually making quite good money here, you should consider buying assets. And you know, I dare say you probably had that chat with your accountant as well, and it's like, the common one is, we'll buy property. But I actually believe in the richest man in Babylon. So I think it's about sticking to things you know. So I'd rather buy a business because it's something, it's an asset class I understand. I don't really understand crypto markets or bitcoins or stocks or property. That's not my jam. Whereas if I buy a business I know that I can kind of like build out a better website, market it better, maybe cut some of its kind of silly costs out of it, and I can run it in a lean structure. So me buying the right kind of company, I could see a massive return on that. And then likewise, you can buy them and sell them. So you can flip businesses like houses. And again, who talks about that? I've not seen any business podcasts talking about that. So I was thinking, why should we not be talking about this as a series? You know, I'm actually, I mean, you can probably tell, I'm up here G'd up to get started on it. But I just thought it would be interesting to kind of share. That's how I see Hybrid Anchor. So I don't see it as an agency. I see it as, it's a group. And the idea with that group is to acquire other agencies that are in the marketing, the digital, the software, the e-commerce, the e-learning space, and then use that as an asset class to build up a group of companies. There is other companies, interestingly enough, one of the companies I'm creating, it's not an acquisition, but it has an acquisition play. So I'm building quite a large company to the side of Hybrid Anchor it's in the technical and the software space, but actually I'm considering, do I acquire a company to then build that framework upon? And I think, again, jumping back say 3 years, I wouldn't have been thinking like that. I'd be thinking, right, what do I need to put in place to organically build that? So that could be like a 7-year project. I actually think within 6 years I could not only build that or acquire it and build it, but I could take it to like a really sizable exit within 6 years. Basically building it in a way that I'm not emotionally attached to it, because my income's derived from Hybrid Anchor. And what I've kind of learned in the lesson in that was, the first guy that said they built up and he sold, the thing that I noticed is he gave up his infrastructure every time. So it's kind of like, imagine you play the chess game and then you win the chess game and you get like, say, a payout. So let's just say it's like you win the chess game, there's 100 grand, and you go, oh, it's great, right, reset the board again. But now you need to make all the pieces and carve all the pieces and you know, work out your new strategy. You can't use the previous players, you can't use the hosting, you can't use the company. So the way I'm looking at it is, if you build it as a group, you retain the infrastructure, so the pieces are still there. So all you do is you reset the board, you don't reset the pieces, so you're not back to carving out pieces again, because that seemed like a bad use of energy. And I think that's the comparison I draw between the first guy and the second guy, is the second guy had kind of worked out, I could actually like fold this flat into the same infrastructure. So if I buy an agency today and then I'm kind of using my senior management team to look after the asset, I could sell that in 3 years time. But I could also buy another 6 or another 2, or I could build 3 organically, and I don't lose my infrastructure.
It's amazing. And I think people need to understand. I mean, I don't think a lot of people know how to even sell their business, or do they know what their plan is. I think they're going to hit the retirement age and it's like, oh well, just
what do we do now?
What do I do now? How do I sell it? You know, who's going to buy the business off me? Now, we've worked with somebody that buys and sells businesses, and it could be like cafes and things, but there's other things as well, like accountancies. So, you know, I know that they basically sell the fees, they don't sell the business, so they'll just sell the fees over. But ultimately having that plan as well, like if you are wanting a lifestyle business, so it'd be good to, obviously, when we talk about this, and having a lifestyle business, that's fine. You know, that's completely fine. You know, if that's what you want to do and that's your bag, that's your long-term business strategy, that's fine. But do you know when the end is?
It's hard to exit that though, isn't it?
It is.
A lifestyle business is one of the hardest to exit.
Absolutely, it's absolutely. And you said it as well. There's, like I do, I feel Market Mavens is my baby, but ultimately I'm also honest with it. It's like, if they're, you know, I want to get it to the point where I want to sell it and make a lot of money, and then, you know, sail off into the sunset, like quite literally sail off in the sunset with a big giant super yacht.
Super yacht. Love it. The vision board.
No, to be honest, I remember we went to Saint-Tropez. Just kind of side notes. We went to Saint-Tropez and you see some of these super yachts, and you think that's like super rich. That's like rich.
Oh, that's been 6 months.
And then you're like, that's like, I'm like, how rich is that's like rich. I mean, it's like they're pulling out boat, like a smaller boat outside the boat, and they've got like cars coming in. They're like driving Ferraris outside it. You're like, what is in this boat, man? It's like madness. But it takes some money that you get. But I think that's, you know, something that we'll talk about. As I said, succession planning as well. I want to kind of talk about that. Definitely like acquisitions, mergers. Like, I really want to kind of delve into, how you've done it, because like you've essentially you bought over a business, or you merged with a business, didn't you?
Yeah, so I've done merging from a business, so you kind of merge asset classes, and I've done acquisitions through buying departments of other businesses, which again is a kind of a move that people don't realise is an option. I've also looked at multiple acquisitions in the sense of buying to fold flat into my infrastructure. I've looked at buying to the side as running as a separate entity, and I've actually looked at what you class as like buying something and then splitting its asset class off. So like specifically, imagine you have a digital agency that has an IT arm and a digital agency. I could see that the digital agency would maybe reinforce what Hybrid does, but the IT company would either need to form up its own company, or I might sell it to an IT business. And I think for being clever about it, you could actually have a fairly sizable IT business buy the IT element from you, and you could use that capital to fund the acquisition of the main agency. And it's like these deals are out here because the big key thing is there's only so much entrepreneurs that have a track record and they've got a drive. So when an investor looks at that, and it's again probably one of the things that will come up over this series, is when a venture capitalist or a private investor sees somebody that's like a driver, they know that they can kind of drop that person into a company and they will supercharge that company and pull it forward. You can see it. I look at certain brands and I'm thinking that's going nowhere because the person running that brand is quite content to sit in the mediocre. They're happy to just where they are at, it's fine. So they're more like a farmer, they maintain. Whereas you get other people and they've got itchy feet. I've got itchy feet, so I've got like, I'm always like, right, what else can we do? What's the company? I sit in the middle of the night and wake up and go, right, I was thinking we should do this, and my wife's going, you're mad. Like, I'm not going to hire anybody for 6 months. Then you're like, bang, there's 2 people I've hired. But I think people have got that in them. So I've got like it's not even to do with like kind of point scoring or to be driven that way. It's just because I've got this kind of thing in me where I think, see, if you really want to kind of push yourself, you should do the very maximum that you're capable of doing. So when I first started my business, I thought, I don't want to be one of these guys that sets up a consultancy and I don't hire anyone. Because it's like, I think people that can build companies should build companies. Because if everybody thought that way and they said, we'll just be a consultant and we'll just stay there, or we'll be employed, there would be less jobs. Like, there isn't going to be wealth created for other people to pay their mortgage. Whereas, let's say, for example, you say, right, I want Market Mavens to be a 200-person agency. Right? Now, that's obviously like a big scale, and that's a journey to get there. But that means that you're giving 199 people a salary and a job and a meaningful career, and they will reference it the way we reference the places we worked. And I think, like, if you're capable of doing that, you should. Whereas a lot of people, I think they look at it and they say, I'm not really sure. It's probably safer to just have a consultancy, and I'm like, I get it, but see, when you become like an old kind of person, you're probably going to look at it and say, I can't sell this. You can't sell Mark the lecturer. I can't sell John the digital consultant. Like, you just can't sell. And
think about it as well, is like, if it's a lifestyle business and like they love John, I love you, John, you do my marketing, it's great. Try and sell that to somebody like so. I've sold this to Mark. He's now going to be like taking over.
Who's that?
No, but I'm going to do business with you, John. And I'm just going to leave then. So
all clients disappear.
Exactly, all clients disappear when you're moving away. It makes it very difficult. Then do you do it? Do you sell the business, but then you stay in the business, and then how long have you got to stay in the business while you're selling it? There's lots of things that you got to think about, and it is dangerous and it's risky. One of the other things that we'll talk about as well, and it's like something I started to do, is I've started taking equity in businesses. So again, working with like scale ups and things, taking a part of equity in their business, even to kind of use it as part of we've only got a certain budget to hit this, and I want that one, I'm going to take an X percentage for you to do, the other year or the other kind of 6 months. But it's a great thing because I'm vested in them to be successful now.
Because you're going to get a return.
Because I'm going to get a return on it. So just taking it, and that's a great way to have money as well. So taking equity in one of the companies is booming already, and I know already I'm going to probably get about £2 million out of it or something like that. When it gets to like the saleable point, which could be like 5 years. So it's, you know, it goes well. So that these type of things, trying to just bring in different things, it's not just long-term business strategy, because when I do that and I get that bit of money, then what else can I do? You know, I've actually now got money where I can actually buy in an equity in the company, so I actually can then, you know, source a company and go, that looks like a good, you know, startup. You know, maybe it's in the marketing technology world. Bang, I'll put this in.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing as well. Is people think that you need to have millions lying about to buy a company. So it's like, if you look at the majority of companies, I mean, we obviously can't do the episodes like that, sadly, but you know, if you looked at a kind of lineup of like your who's who in agencies, and you said, right, well, what was their operational profit? So they're going to get a multiplier on the profit based on their sector and the kind of how they are. You're going to factor in things like who's running the business. Are those owners or those directors necessary, or could you hire an MD? What would that cost? Is there any kind of weight you could cut away for the company? But I think it's like, when you actually look at people that acquire companies, like I know several people that do that now, because I've made it my business to kind of start quoting and work out who these people are that are doing that, to learn the skill set. And what I've kind of noticed is, although they could become liquid very quickly and put their hand on quite a large amount of capital, they don't. So they, even though they have access to it, they'll find other ways to do it.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's such a clever idea. So it's like, say for example, I find a company, it's a guy I follow on YouTube, right? But just say like you find a company, so it's company X, and you're thinking, right, I want to buy that. Okay, let's go and talk to them. What's the company valuated at? How much money would you need for me to buy this? Okay, is it worth that? Then you kind of negotiate the price in theory, and then you get effectively a packet. So it's like, here's the value of the company, here's how much money I would need. You can literally turn to an investor and say, I tell you what we'll do, Mark, you put in the £1.2 million, we'll buy this asset and we'll go 50% on the profit.
Yep.
So I'll run it as the MD under my infrastructure, you'll sit and sip coconuts, and then we'll both do well together. We'll get 50% equity stake in it. That's actually surprisingly common. Yep. And again, I don't think people think about that. No. I think they're like, well, I would need the money and I would need, and you're like, people do this with houses, but people are desperate as investors to get people that will drive that forward and make them a return.
It's exactly the model that my mum did with my brother. So my mum was wanting to sell our business, and try, like, she was not getting the right amount of money to try and sell it, and then my brother was like, I want to take it over, and he's taken it over as now the owner of the business. But from that profit, that's what essentially is going to be like her retirement, you know, from it as well. And that will essentially kind of buy the business, and then he'll be, you know, Kevin will be the full owner. You know, it's a great way to take over a business, because Kevin didn't have the money, you know, to buy the business either. You know, he didn't have the money.
So was he doing like an earn out then, or?
Yeah.
So he's like working on it and then he earns the shares over.
Like that. So
I think that's the other thing you've got to think about as well. The reality is, it's not Peter Pan. People age out.
Yeah.
So right now there's lots of companies that are run by old people, and you know, I don't mean that in a sort of derogatory term. I just mean they've aged out of that market. Realistically, they're going to be thinking, how much longer have I got to live? What do I want my lifestyle to be like? Do I want the stress of waking up every day and dealing with some of the... Because I think your enthusiasm probably does dip as you age, you know what I mean? Like I'm definitely grumpier than I used to be. But I'm imagining myself as like an old dude. You probably look at it and you go, I can't really be bothered with this kind of thing. That seems so petty. Because just experience. So I think the other thing you've got to look at is the value of your time. So, you know, we were having a discussion quite recently, and we're kind of going through this investment, and I'm thinking, so there's, let's say, 16 hours of prep and a pitch, and that pitch could be multiple millions of pounds worth of express value. Whereas how many sales would I need to land as a digital agency to bring in that same kind of value? And you're like, that's really what I should be spending my time doing. But then leveling that up as like an asset house, why wouldn't you build that for yourself? Like, it doesn't make any sense not to do it. But again, it's quite a hard skill to accrue, because that's not the normal business. Most people, they give themselves a job. So they jump out of like a job and they kind of say, right, I'll be a marketeer, a designer, or whatever. The work is maybe a freelancer, and they might be being an incubator, and they kind of learn the business skills, and they think, right, I'm a business owner. And you're like, but you're still doing marketing. That person's still doing design. They're still doing sales. These are all roles within that company. Whereas if I say to you, look, I'm going to give you this company to run, but you're not allowed to run marketing mavens because I want your focus to be in this entity, what would you do with Market Mavens? You would go straight into autopilot saying, I need to hire an MD, an office manager, I'll put it on autopilot. So then the question becomes, why are you not doing that now?
Aye. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, when you think it that way, you're like, oh, that's so obvious. Like, why
Yeah.
am I not doing that? But it's like, that's the case. Now, the difference is, with you and your business, me and my business, it drives it harder. Of course it does.
Yeah.
But it's still like that kind of thing. Like, if I had to say to you, so if you could do this kind of thing, would you not then step away from that and allow that to go into autopilot? Of course you would.
Yeah.
So the question is, why
It's
do
funny,
people not do it?
it's brilliant to see this as well, because I remember I was working for a company and they get bought over, and the people that bought them over, and they buy off lots and lots of companies in the same sector. There's like a software company, and they buy lots of the companies, so that's how they're taking over the market share. It's like, it's brilliant to see. But they just come in and they're going, this guy's now the chief operating officer. Like, he's guy, like their own guy, and the guy's like, right, bum, process that way, bang, process that way, bang, gets it all just kind of singing, and then walks out, and then he's on, obviously that's his role. Then he's in the next one where they're going to go and buy it. Somebody else then comes in as the CEO and just runs everything in that same sort of procedure, but now under the guise of the new company. It's great to kind of see, like,
it's amazing to kind of do that,
like how it works. So, you know, could probably kind of finish up there, but I mean, what was your business belter for today, and you know what you're looking forward to in this series?
Yeah, so I think rather than like a kind of business belter, I think the thing that I'm most looking forward to is actually like focusing on those topics, like growth through acquisitions. That's something I'm really, really interested in, and I've spent probably the last at least 2.5 years solely focused on that. I don't think that a lot of people know that about me and you, so I think it'll be interesting to come out on the podcast and have that discussion.
Yeah.
I don't know why we didn't come out earlier, but yeah, it's going to be really interesting. So I think the growth through acquisitions and talking about like building an asset class, for people that are interested in business, it should be quite interesting. But also, if you're in an agency space, it maybe takes you out of that kind of freelance mentality to kind of consider, well, wait a minute, there is actually a different way to view all of this. So that's what I'm kind of most looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not really a business belter, but it's what I'm kind of looking forward to, is really delving into how I'm going to actually scale the business, and probably giving you some tips of like what I'm actually going to do and how I'm actually going to acquire companies. I really am looking forward to kind of delving into that. Also, like, you know, I'm really researching and going into things with like succession planning, because as I just kind of pointed out there, you know, you've got somebody goes and buys over a company and they get their guy in. You know, do I hire a person, you know, that is going to be the managing director of, you know, Market Mavens Glasgow while I move on, or do I bring, you know, do I start looking now, you know, because I'm looking for this to be probably, you know, next year, tail end of next year, that we're going to be moving into another area. So there'll be a lot of kind of planning around that. So I need to think, is there somebody there that's a little nugget that I could actually train up, or do I actually need to bring somebody in? Which brings your own kind of problems, because it's like there's that culture with, you know, what we're talking about.
It's not even like a normal staff member. It's a lot deeper than that. So if you put the wrong person at the head of a ship, that ship will sink. Whereas if you put, you know, and it's not meant as an offence to anyone that does it, but if you hire better than you, so you might hire somebody when your company say 30 strong, but they could take you from 30 to 70 because that's what they do. So like hiring the right person could actually be the best thing you've ever done for Market Mavens, and I think that's exciting, because then it's like see, I wouldn't have done that because I wouldn't have been comfortable with this type of thing. But they don't see it that way. They just see it as my remit and my shares in this business get expressed if I grow it. So I want to grow the 11 daylights out of it, because that's how they get the biggest salary they can get. Yeah, excellent. So yeah, I'll wrap it up for that one. So this is a series that we're going to be going through on the podcast. We're going to be kind of touching on different topics. Today's episode was more just kind of taking you on a kind of whistle-stop tour of some of the things we'll be discussing. Next episode we'll be talking about succession planning, which I think will be a really good one to kick us off. The idea of that is, it's like, so what is the future of the company, and how can you set yourself up for that exit, and what kind of things should you consider with that? Definitely, if you're kind of going to follow along the series, please do subscribe. You get notified of the new episodes. They drop every Wednesday. So if you want to follow along with this series, where you're listening to this now when they're airing, or whether you're listening in the future, this will become like various segments as we come out. So please do like, share and subscribe. And likewise, if there's any questions around some of the topics we spoke about, now would be the time to email them in. So if you send us that as comments or private messages or an email, it's really going to help us kind of include that within the upcoming episodes. So definitely take advantage of that. All that's left to say, guys, is a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from him. Thank you.
Catch you next week.